Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're taking a huge and honestly a really exciting step forward in our permaculture journey. We're building directly on our last lesson. You remember lesson 1.2.2 V3, where we dove deep into functional and attitudinal design. Now, attitudinal design is absolutely crucial, right? It teaches us how to shift our perspective and find clever uses for the resources already inside our system. But today we're flipping the script. We're going to explore a totally different dynamic. What actually happens when the outside world forcefully crashes into those carefully planned internal systems? We are stepping right outside the boundaries we've drawn and facing the raw elements head-on. Picture this for a second. Imagine you've just finished designing the absolute perfect garden. I mean, you've mastered stacking functions, your soil biology is humming, your guilds are planted flawlessly, but what happens when a raging wildfire or a sudden, bitter, freezing wind arrives right at your property line? In our last lesson, we focused so much on internal planning, but the hard truth is, all of that beautiful, highly productive design can literally be undone in a flash if we just ignore the wild, uncontrollable forces coming at us from the outside. Look, you can't exactly put a giant glass dome over your land, right? So you absolutely have to learn how to anticipate, interact with, and actually utilize whatever nature decides to throw your way. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to bridge the design gap between our internal plans and those external realities. Then we'll formally meet these wild energies. After that, we'll hit the three main actions you can take: block, channel, or store. Then we'll look at a real-world example. And finally, we'll tie it all together by harmonizing sectors with the zones we already know and love. All right, let's jump right into section 1, bridging the design gap. This is all about connecting the dots between the peaceful landscape we're trying to build and the incredibly powerful external forces of nature that are already there. In permaculture, we manage this crazy dynamic through a super important process called sector analysis. What does that mean? Well, simply put, it's the observation and mapping of wild, uncontrollable external energy vectors that literally sweep across a site from the outside. Think of them as these massive energies generated far beyond your property line, just passing directly through your living space. To map this out, a designer picks a central reference point, usually the main house, but it could be a barn or a specific garden bed, and draws a full 360-degree circle around it. By doing this, we pinpoint exactly which compass directions these formidable energies are coming from. It basically gives us a literal map of nature's impact on our site. And this brings us to a really brilliant piece of philosophy from permaculture co-founder Bill Mollison. He famously said, "The problem is the solution. It is just up to us to work out how we may use it as such." This is a massive mindset shift, guys. Think about it. When a freezing winter wind howls through your property, it's not just a threat to your crops, it's an actual positive resource, as long as you figure out how to use its strength or coolness to your advantage. Or what about a heavy, destructive flow of stormwater tearing across your yard? Instead of panicking about a flooding disaster, that same water can be caught and transformed into a gorgeous, thriving aquaculture pond. Sector analysis is entirely about reframing environmental challenges into incredible design opportunities. Which brings us to section 2. Let's officially meet these wild energies. You know, the uninvited guests that are showing up on your property, whether you roll out the welcome map or not. Mollison categorized these external vectors into what he called wild energies. What are they? Well, they include the seasonal paths of the sun, and we mean both the scorching high summer sun and that much weaker low winter sun. They include dominant winds, which, depending on where you live, might be freezing cold, blisteringly hot, salty from the ocean, or even carrying dust and noise pollution from a highway down the road. We also have to map out potential wildfire paths, the historic migration corridors of roaming wildlife, and the natural gravitational flow of water, like flood-prone spots or heavy seasonal rain paths. Why lump these all together? Because they are all dynamic, highly mobile, and completely ignore human-made property lines. They are essentially arrows of pure natural energy just winging their way right toward your home. Okay, moving right along to section 3, block, channel, or store. Now that we know what these wild energies actually are, how do we handle them at a practical, boots-on-the-ground level? Because, as we know, we can't just hit an off switch. Whenever one of these energies enters our sector map, we step in and place design components to do one of 3 very specific things. Number 1, we can block or screen out destructive energies. A perfect example of this is planting a dense, wedge-shaped line of evergreen trees to act as a windbreak against those biting winter gales. Number 2, we can channel useful energies. This might look like digging a swale exactly along contour to elegantly redirect incoming rainwater right to the roots of your thirsty fruit trees. Or number 3, we can store abundant energies. Think about the physics of thermal mass. If you build a thick stone wall facing the winter sun, that dense material soaks up solar radiation all day long. Then, as the night gets cold, that mass slowly releases the stored heat, passively warming a greenhouse or your living room. And, of course, if an energy isn't a threat and we don't need it, we just let it pass right through unimpeded. Let's move to section 4 and pull all of this out of the abstract. What does this process actually look like when we apply this exact framework to a real, everyday backyard scenario? Imagine 2 identical homes, right? Both built with these large, beautiful southwest-facing windows. If a designer is operating with a conventional mechanical worldview, they might just ignore the sun sector completely. And the result? Structural friction. In July, the home absorbs massive, unmitigated solar radiation, turning the place into an absolute oven that needs crazy expensive air conditioning. Fast forward to January, and it might not capture enough warmth, leaving the house freezing and leaning heavily on the furnace. But if we shift to an ecological worldview and intentionally design for that sun sector, we can achieve natural, passive climate regulation with almost zero ongoing effort or energy bills. It's a total game changer. A classic, really elegant solution to this sun sector challenge is the grapevine arbor. By placing a deciduous vine like grapes, kiwis, or hops on a sturdy arbor right there in the southwest sun sector, you literally solve both seasonal problems at the exact same time. During the summer, the vine grows thick, dense green leaves that actively block out that scorching solar radiation, keeping the living areas inside cool and shaded. But in the fall, the plant naturally drops its leaves, so when those freezing winter months hit, the bare branches just channel that much-needed low-angle winter sun right through the glass to passively heat the house. And hey, talk about stacking functions. You get to relax in the cool summer shade while casually snacking on fresh grapes from the very system that cools your home. It is just a perfect example of working with nature instead of fighting it. All right, for our final section, section 5, let's see how sector analysis works perfectly in tandem with the zoning principles you probably already know. Bringing these 2 together really completes the whole landscape design puzzle. To truly master this, we have to contrast sector analysis with zone analysis. Now, zone analysis is entirely about internal energy management. Its main metric is the frequency of human use. Literally how often you physically walk over to visit a plant, a tool shed, or an animal system. Because of that, it's usually laid out as a series of concentric circles radiating outward from your home. Sector analysis, on the flip side, is completely about external energy management. Its metric is the direction of wild, natural energies coming at you from the outside. So its layout looks more like a 360-degree compass with directional wedges, kind of like slices of a pie pointing inward toward your house. To put it simply, zones dictate how you spend your own energy outward, while sectors manage how nature pushes its energy inward. The real magic happens when you combine the 2. When you overlay those directional sector wedges right on top of your concentric zone circles, you create what Bill Mollison called the master pattern. This is the ultimate energy-conserving blueprint for an entire site. A design component is only truly well placed when it sits in the correct zone and the correct sector. Take a highly flammable pine tree, for example. You absolutely don't want it close to your house in Zone 1, and you definitely don't want it sitting in the incoming fire sector. But if you take that exact same tree, move it far away into Zone 4, and position it directly in the path of the cold winter winds sector, suddenly it becomes this incredible low-maintenance windbreak that protects the entire farm. You're simultaneously minimizing your labor and maximizing nature's cooperation. It's brilliant. And that wraps up our explainer on sector analysis. As you step outside today and take a look around your own space, I want to leave you with this question. What wild energy is sweeping across your yard right now, and how are you going to welcome it? Take a second to just feel the wind, track the sun, or notice where the rainwater is pooling. Remember the core philosophy we talked about today. The problem just might be your ultimate design solution if you know how to block, channel, or store it. Thanks so much for joining me today on this journey into permaculture design. And as always, keep observing.